This episode is sponsored by The Obvious Company. We're featuring our exclusive $0 off. And you're wondering, why $0? Like usually there's like a discount. But actually, the motto of The Obvious Company is that there's no sales, no discounts, just limited quantity. So that you're not like, oh, I just bought something and it went on sale. And you're like, oh, I feel so bad. It's just the best price all year round.
For the best design.
Yes. So, I'm just kidding. We're just having fun.
What's your podcast called? I don't even know.
My podcast is called I Eat the Word of God. So
Okay.
pretty much I go over my personal readings, and then I share a little bit of testimonies, and then I have Bible studies with my friends, and then I want to have these kind of like conversations and like testimonial talks with like other brothers and sisters, or like just like talking about how their experience with the Lord has been, or like what kind of questions they have, kind of to keep it like it's kind of different every episode, but because it's like really hard to control the content when I want to feature so many different people. But I think it's like for myself, what I'm doing is just like I'm going through like a book in the Bible. So right now I'm going through Esther. So I'm just doing the readings and then like sharing a little bit of testimonies. And then that's something that like I'm producing on my own. But then like other stuff is this. Yeah.
With people. Yeah.
Thank you. So here's a little introduction for these lovely people here.
Hello, my name is Jesse. I am a recent graduate student who just graduated at Eastern Michigan with a Bachelor's of Arts and Science. I studied animation. This is my first time on the podcast. I met Nancy last year at a church conference, and these two lovely people, I've known Andy since birth. This guy probably changed my diaper. I knew him for the longest time ever. And then I met Renee also a while back at a church conference too. I've been a Christian for many, many, many years now. I was born and raised in a Christian family. And being in a Christian family is definitely different from other people's experience. You know, you either feel like you're dragged into church, I felt like that for a little bit. But I would say I started seeking God probably after middle school. Actually, this was when I started to play music for the church, was when I experienced and tasted God a little bit through music, through serving young people. And now is just I can confidently say I have a strong relationship with God. I do my best to walk with him in my daily life, do my best to read his word, to act upon his word. And it's just a relationship with God until death, and even just, with the people around me to help me grow more.
What do you mean until death? Like there's resurrection.
There is resurrection. Well,
after.
I mean, yeah, there's resurrection. I would say my relationship with the Lord has grown within the past couple of years, and it's always going to continue to grow more. It'll never stop growing.
I guess I'll go. I'm Andy. So let's see. Yeah, so I was born into a Christian family. And then I pretty much was like, my parents never really forced me to go to church. I just kind of attended the meetings that they were going to. And then I prioritized all kinds of things over the Lord and church. Although every time I went, I had a good time. I just wasn't very active. And so I was probably attending a meeting once a month to once a quarter. Just busy with sports and extracurriculars, and mainly playing video games. and sleeping over at other people's houses to play video games. And that was pretty much my life until like high school. And then, I don't know, I just kind of had a feeling like, what is this Christian life? You know, is this thing really worth spending all my time doing? Is it worth, like, you know, like the average, like go to like a weekly Sunday meeting that's like 2 to 3 hours. You have to do Bible studies and all these small groups, and that's, you know, 2 to 3 hours. So it's like a full-time hobby, you know, like 10 to, you know, 20 hours if you're really into it, a week. And so I just kind of was wondering, like, is this thing like really worth it? And so I like began to ask a lot of questions and kind of seek, and I realized, like, I think it's the real thing, you know. And I kind of got into a lot of arguments with my parents, because my parents were like, you should like focus on school, and you should focus on like real life, not spiritual life. And then I just like, I didn't quite understand, because I felt like, if this Jesus guy is true, and he did die for my sin, and he did save me, and there is a resurrection, then like all the things in the Bible should be true. Not just the get out of hell card, not just this kind of like, you know, just believe what you want to believe. Like, if one thing's true, or if this Jesus guy is the one, and what he did is the real thing, then everything should be true. And so that's kind of when I started taking it seriously. Kind of in high school, in college, I just was pursuing to figure out what really is true and what is like, yeah. And then here I am, still, you know, like, feel like this is the real deal. Feel like there is a life inside of me. The reality of God's word is real in my own experience. And so just trying to figure out what that looks like and how to live that out in a practical day to day.
I think you're really like growing. Like, your relationship with the Lord is not something like, you know, sometimes when it comes to a hobby, you may like, you do it, and then the more you do it, the better you get, right? And then sometimes you do something and you're like, oh, I'm sick of it, I don't do it anymore. But I feel like, yeah, the Lord, like, giving, like, having a like church life or like spiritual life is something like a hobby too, but then it just keeps growing, and then you're also growing with it. Like how people learn from playing pickleballs. You can also learn from, I guess, eating God's word, and then like being a part of church, maybe. For sure.
And I think that's like an interesting thing, because like I thought it was just going to church and just doing church. And then, like, you know, we have a phrase in our church circles, it's called church life.
Yeah, that's true.
And, you know, some people are overwhelmed. They're like, it's taking over my entire life, you know? And then that's one way to look at it. And the other way is like, it's taking over my life. And that's like kind of an amazing thing, you know? Like, sometimes I just feel like my life is got a lot of selfishness, a lot of envy, a lot of not so much peace. And then it's like, oh, it can take over my life. I can live by a different life, and it can kind of invade all areas of my life. And I think that's actually a good thing, you know.
Hi everyone, I'm Renee, and I'm a statistical programmer working for hospitals, like clinical research and stuff. But I think that's just a job. Like, how I came to the Lord, I guess, I'm not born like in a Christian family, so I'm kind of like a first generation Christian. I went to a Christian high school, and then I was like starting with, this is ridiculous, I would not believe this at all. To the last year of graduating high school, I was like, oh, I want to get baptized because I think this is the truth, and I hope to find the truth. So that's how I got saved. And then after like 2 years, I started to know about the church life and our church right now. And I start to like know about what pursuing means and pursuing the Lord means and what loving the Lord even means. Yeah, so that's, and I like not switched, but I moved around so that I go to different church. I go to church in Ann Arbor right now. I meet there with the saints there. Yeah, I guess like
I think that's good. Yeah.
Well, I guess like since I like how like our group right now is me and you. We're actually neither of us was born in a Christian family, and then both of you were actually born and raised in a Christian family. So like the biggest difference we have, like we can talk about, is like, I guess our journey to the Lord was something that we could choose, right? We had a choice, and that we didn't know about it before. So I guess we can talk about what was it like for you, the biggest difference that you've experienced or you've witnessed in other people's life, in church versus outside of church.
first of all, I do feel like I had to have that moment of like making a choice or a decision of like wanting to follow the Lord, and that is like quite different from like being born in a Christian family. But I still feel like, I don't know, my impression about even second generation is that you still need to make a choice.
Yeah, that's true.
But I guess maybe, I don't know, that's just my understanding of like, it's a free choice or like free will for everyone. But as a first gen, making that choice is, I don't know, now that I'm thinking about it, I actually don't feel like I made the choice. I feel like it was that, because I never really thought coming into like going to a Christian school, like, oh, I want to become a Christian, like that kind of feeling. It's more like I feel like the Lord chose me instead of I choose the Lord. Although like it does make sense, like, okay, you do want to believe, but I feel like it was more like the Lord chose me, because it was such a coincidence that I went to a Christian school, because it was so random that I wanted to even come to the States for high school. So I feel like, and then it was kind of like magically happened that they like accept me to come, and then I get to go, and my parents even agreed that I could go. So I feel like, wow, like when I think about that it was actually, that decision of coming to the States only happened in a month. And that's the fastest like change of course of someone's life, like just making that decision in 1 month. So I feel like in that sense, I feel like the Lord actually chose me first to, even like, if we say like the foundation of the world, but like in this lifetime, I feel like he actually pursued me. He arranged my life so that eventually I could see who he is, and then I could see, okay, do I want to receive this life? So I feel like, I don't know, I just have this strong feeling that he really chose me at this moment right now. But I do actively believed him. Like I actively am aware that I believed him. And how is that different in my life? I feel like it's been so long. I don't really like remember the difference, but I feel like the Lord is still shaping my view as a first gen, because I feel like maybe they could talk more about like how it's been raised like in a Christian family, but I feel like there's so many cultural like conflicts that are happening in my life right now that I have to face that right now, instead of them, they kind of already shaped in that way. So I feel like that's how different it is. Like sometimes I don't really understand what love really means until, for example, when I got married to Andy, and he kind of told me like, I will receive you as a whole package, because I will accept your flaws and the good things about you, like together. Because my understanding about love was, this is just one example. Like my understanding about love is like, oh, I should earn it. I should do good things, and I should perform well. Yeah. So I feel like all of those things are how what like worldly culture or like a culture besides Christian have taught me when I was raised up. And I feel like that's the hugest, like biggest difference growing up as a first gen. And I sometimes actually envy like people that are raised in a Christian family, whether how much your parents love the Lord. But I think being in that environment is really different from a first gen family.
What about you, Nancy? Do you see anything different, or things that you're running into like, man?
My mom baptized like a month before me. So in a sense, we're only a month spiritually away from each other. And sometimes I do feel like she's more of a sister than mom. So if you want to talk about like that sense, I feel like she doesn't, like, she's experienced a lot of the Lord in her life. But I've also experienced a lot of the Lord in my life. So there's not much of like shepherding involved when it comes to like my spiritual life, versus definitely I think in Jesse and maybe in your case and in other people's case where it's like they can see what their parents are doing. So an example would be my best friend. One of my best friends, her mom is very spiritual, like very just, she loves the Lord. She always puts him first. She like taught my friend so much about the Lord. To a sense, I think she experienced more of the Lord through the talking with her mom than she did personally. So like that's at first, her foundation was like through talking and learning experiences from her mom, versus me. I think I'm kind of just like I experienced it myself. Like, so it was kind of hard because like if my mom and I were both trying to figure this thing out, it's kind of like two siblings, we're just like fighting over like who's right or who's wrong.
That makes sense.
Versus my friend, like she can, she would be able to share with me like, oh, like my mom said, apparently one time she lost her ring, and then it's a very precious ring, and then she was like, she panicked and she was looking for it, and she called her mom, and her mom told her that the Lord wants us to seek him with the heart that she had while seeking the ring. So it's like stuff like this. She was like, oh yeah, that's how much the Lord wants us to seek him. Like, yeah, so it's like in a sense I feel like I experienced more like things on my own, as I don't even know, I guess a first gen as well. And I've definitely witnessed the changes in my family a little bit. And then because my parents are divorced, I see a bigger difference in my dad's side of the family versus my mom's.
I think earlier, Renee, you said you like envy us second gen. I would say I envy first gen people. I think I hear all these like interesting and amazing testimonies of like, oh, like, like whatever, I was like drinking and all these crazy stuff, and then I met the Lord, and I'm here like, oh, what, like I was just dragged into church by my parents. And then sure, they've impacted that, but they were never like forced on me. That decision of getting baptized is never forced. It was a decision of my own. But then like my journey to that wasn't as like exhilarating, as special as the other people. So in that way, I envy the first generations. Up until like when I got baptized, it's like I was influenced by like my parents, but then maybe I like saw the love and care of the ones who watched over me when I grew up with like my parents, and like the serving ones. And it's like I see it very differently. Like, oh, they're not doing this just because they care about me, love me so much, but like, hey, they also read the Bible with me. Something was implanted in me.
I like that word.
Yeah.
Imprinted.
Yeah, and like I felt that love from the older ones, and I was just like amazed. I was like, didn't know people can be cared that way. We could, give them gifts. We can give them, like other stuff. But like, hey, can you care about this person like a spiritual way? I think that's something more precious than just, caring this person about just like this is a friend, or like a best friend. But
What does a spiritual care look like for you? Because like,
yeah.
Because to me, I feel like when you describe like the love and care you receive from people, like to me, when it comes to me, I often have time misunderstanding it. Like the way I look at it is a little bit different than just like love and care, like two colors. Versus I look at it so many different colors, and then when you say like a spiritual care, I understand that if someone's willing to read the Bible with you, tell you about the Lord, tell you about God, answer your questions, like that's a spiritual care. But once it comes to like the love and care and all that stuff, what does it look like to you? Because
yeah, I mentioned earlier in my introduction that like I've knew Andy for like the longest time ever, and I go to you a lot. I go to Andy for a lot of personal things, a lot of dumb things, and to me, what spiritual care is, it's not just reading the Bible with each other. It's not just like, him giving me rides to youth group, but it's more of like I'm in his life. I'm like a little big prioritization in his daily life, where he's available to me when I need it. I don't feel pressured about reaching out to him. I don't feel pressured about asking him to come over. I don't feel pressured about, texting him at like 1:30 a.m., crying to him about stuff. He's just there for me. And like, this is on top of like reading the Bible. This is on top of, serving with him serving me. And that's like the love and care and the spiritual care for me. And to me, that's just really precious, because it's really hard to find someone like that.
Yeah, I think if I could jump in, like, I think spiritual care often hurts a lot more than you're aware. Because, I think as I'm like growing in the Lord, I realize like the Lord was like fully human. He was fully divine. And so like he has a rich humanity, and he knows how to, give people rides. He knows how to like care for people, be there with them in the suffering. He knows how to care, and he has empathy and all these amazing human traits. And that should be very abundant in the church life. And then the spiritual care is often like, I thought this was correct and it was not. Like it's the things of the unseen, like we think that we're being spiritual, and then somebody's just like, you don't love the Lord. And I'm like, you don't know how much I sacrificed. Like that was like the first time I looked at it, and I was so bitter for so long. Like, what does this guy know? This guy knows nothing about me. This guy, he's just using me as an example for his own gain, this or that, or asserting his power or dominance. And then looking back, I realized like that was spiritual care. That was to open my eyes to a whole spiritual realm I've never considered before.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate?
I mean, it's just like in general, I thought that, I'm making time to go to meetings. I'm making time to be with the saints. I'm sacrificing my Saturday nights to care for kids, or to attend youth group, or go to X, Y, or Z. I'm giving my life to follow Jesus. Yeah. And then, this guy just, it's like, you don't even know what it means to love the Lord. And I was like, what? Like,
kind of convicting you.
Yeah. And then, and like at the moment I was so hurt, I was like, what are you talking about? But then later, as I grew up, I realized there's a whole spiritual realm. There's a whole spiritual reality that I'm growing into, you know, and this person is farther along and he knows more of the Bible and he knows more spiritual reality. And so that spiritual help actually is to help bring me upwards, which often means I have to face things I don't understand that I've never touched before.
Do you
And
have an example of like how he, or like after, or because you said like he kind of opened up your eyes to see what loving the Lord really means? So like, do you have an example?
I mean, I think it's like, you know, before it was like to love the Lord, I thought was like to make time for him.
Yeah.
And then like looking back now, I realize it's like my whole life is for this person. You know, if I thought love, even in a human sense, was, oh, I just like, I'm available for you, but I'm not chasing after you. You know, I'm not pursuing you. I'm not understanding you. I'm not learning how to communicate with you. I'm not doing things with you, you know, like going through all the life's ups and downs with you, right? So that was when I realized, I actually don't really love the Lord. You know, I can see now what, like from his point of view, much later, wow, he was correct.
Like you have reservation for yourself and like
That's
this
right.
thing that you cannot touch,
Yup.
and stuff like that.
Yup.
Like emotionally available, but just for that much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like I'm available on Sunday night. Don't touch my gaming session from, you know, 12 to 3 a.m. You know, don't touch my, you know, whatever me and my friends joke about. Don't touch these kinds of things. And then I realized like now, after all those things have been touched and destroyed and I've let the Lord, you know, even painfully handle those things, I realized like, oh, that was spiritual help.
Yeah.
This person's calling me out, this person's rebuked, this person's whatever, and it's hard.
Yeah.
And that's when people start
That's right.
being offended.
That's right. And actually many people like don't make it. To just set the expectation, like spiritual help often hurts, at least in the short term. But eventually you follow into the reality and you realize that actually really saved me.
And it's also not easy
Yeah.
spiritually caring for
That's right.
someone.
And you have to be very careful. Like the amount of times I've gotten worried that I'm like gonna say the wrong thing to Jesse, you know, like I have to ask a lot of mercy,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of covering, because what if there's just something I'm just prideful about or something that I'm offended by and I just want to like make it an issue. Actually, that's not spiritual help. That's like spiritual abuse.
Even though I'm only like 20 something, right? So when it comes to caring for my sister, I feel like there's so many mistakes I could make. Saying the wrong thing or, you know, having too much expectation of what she should do on a Sunday.
Yeah.
It's just so sensitive, but it's like, oh, the only thing that worked for me was like the summer I prayed for a Christian friend for her, and it happened just like boom. At a summer camp, she like ran into this girl and she became a good friends with and turned out to be another sister from Christ. And she, like, even herself was like, yeah, like, she's a gift from the Lord. So it's like, I don't know, other stuff I don't want to touch. That thing worked, so I'm like, okay, let's take a break. I'll just leave you alone for now.
Yeah, I feel like spiritual care looks so different. Not like, besides like the point you guys mentioned, like that it hurts. I feel like it also, it's, I don't know, like in my experience, I feel like a lot of time, you know, it makes me think of like the 5 love languages or something. Like you spend time, or like you get gifts, acts of service, which all of that included in the spiritual care. But I think one thing sometimes I feel like people kind of complain about is like, oh, you don't even spend that much time with me, or you don't even hang out with me, like you care about like other brothers and sisters more than you care about me, or something like that. I feel like there's one serving ones that I feel like very cared for, although like he is like much older than, he is like my dad's age, and then I feel like really cared for by him, because it's just like he doesn't really like text me, like he asks like, how are you doing, did you do your morning wash today, or like, oh, like I'm gonna monitor like how well you memorize the Bible and stuff like that. No, he never really does that, but he always asks me like how my life is doing, in terms of he has a consideration of how my life is in 5 years or 10 years, or even like my whole life, like 20 years. Like, who is this person gonna be? How is she gonna be useful for the Lord? How can she live a life for the Lord in the coming years, instead of like just focusing on right now, like, okay, I want to read Bible with you like 5 times a week. No, like he never does that. But after I got married, or like he is concerned about who I date with. He cares about my marriage, and even like my relationship with Andy, right? Like after we got married, every time we go to conference, even though like he travels so many different places to visit different churches, but every time he sees me, he always just like, how are you guys doing? What's your guys' plan for the upcoming years? Like, how are you and your family doing? He just like randomly shoot out questions. I just feel like, you don't really show up like in my life that much, but like, why are you asking all those questions, right? Like, are you investigating or something? But and later I just feel like I don't know, he just doesn't really ask that many questions, but I just feel like he really cares like how your family is doing and who you are as a person, instead of what you do.
Yeah.
If that could summarize it. Because I feel like he like he really cares about what kind of person Andy is even becoming, or who I'm becoming, so that he cares about the vessel that's being like prepared, instead of the outward actions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because like he also doesn't really explain himself.
Yeah.
He just asks these like really obscure questions, and that sound like this guy is like stalking me or something. Like I don't know really how much information I want to share with him.
Yeah.
But actually, like, yeah, when I scope out and as I get older, I realize like I think we're really in his heart. And you can say like, where was he when X, Y, or Z? Like, why didn't you don't even call him, you don't even ask him, you don't really trust him or whatever. But actually it's like, no, like when he's such a busy person, he's caring for so many different churches, and it's not just churches, it's like all the people in the church and the situations in all of these different churches. But then he's like, hey, how are you doing? Like, how's your marriage doing? I know marriage is important for your pursuing. How is your partner doing? How is all these things? And we're just like, dang, this guy, he's got a lot to do, but we're in his heart,
How honest do you answer those questions?
I've learned to just not be too skeptical, just answer them honestly, like it's because like in my heart, I'm pure, like if he's trying to be crafty, like the Lord will take care of him, but like for me, I just want to be pure. But there is some wisdom, right? If there's somebody who is maybe like humanly more on the gossipy side, it's something that the Lord is working on in them, and it's not that good to maybe share that much, especially if you don't feel like you're cared for. I think it's reasonable. You shouldn't just say like, oh, every serving one has got the best intentions for me all the time. It's like as I've learned I've overshared in the past, and it's kind of burned me a little bit. And it's not to say it's anyone's fault. I think it's just the reality of the church being filled with humans. But I would say like, as I get older and as people have trusted me and how careful I have to be and how many mistakes I've made too, I've learned to have a little bit of grace towards the people, who maybe have offended me in a certain way, but it's okay to be where you are,
And it does remind me of how like Jesus himself was actually interested in people. So he'll ask questions. Like he was the one who was interested in the people that he meets. So it's like, I guess like for us to have more of that Christ, it could come out in a form of interest in other people.